When the ego imagines itself a god, the fall stops being a probability and becomes an absolute certainty.
Watch until the end to discover why your biggest success is already engineering your downfall.
He stands in front of 10,000 people. No notes, no hesitation. He talks like a man reading from a book only he can see. 6 months earlier, he was nobody. Now investors call him a visionary, employees call him a genius, and somewhere in between he started calling himself something close to a prophet. Then it collapses. Not slowly, not gently. A leaked memo, a cornered board, a sworn statement that guts everything he said in public for years. Within a week, the empire he built in his own image is being torn apart by the same people who used to worship him. He didn't lose the company first. He lost his grip on reality first. Carl Jung watched men like this long before the fall ever becomes visible to anyone else. And he gave the process a name: inflatio. Ego inflation. It isn't arrogance. It isn't garden variety narcissism. It's closer to an infection. A normal identity swelling past its size, infusing itself onto something it was never built to hold. A god archetype. A myth of unlimited power, borrowed and never returned. Once that fusion locks in, the collapse stops being a possibility. It becomes a certainty, running on a clock nobody in the room can see. And somewhere in the last year, you've probably felt the first click of that clock starting. A win that felt a little too good, a compliment you replayed more than once. A version of yourself that started to feel less like something you built and more like something you always secretly were. This is a story of how success builds its own executioner inside a normal mind, and why the praise you're chasing right now might already be loading the gun for a fall you haven't imagined yet. Jung split the mind into two pieces, and you only have real access to one of them. The first is the ego, the small, waking I that gets up every morning and tells a coherent story about who you are. The second is bigger than you can measure. Jung called it the unconscious, and underneath that sits something bigger still, the self. Not your personality, the whole psychic system underneath your personality. Instinct, memory, contradiction. A set of inherited patterns Jung called archetypes. The hero, the king, the magician, the god. Nobody teaches you these patterns. They show up on their own, in every culture, every myth, every religion, long before any one person is born into them. Under normal conditions, you can borrow from an archetype for a while. You act with unusual courage during a crisis, and by evening you're ordinary again, tired and human. The archetype passes through you. It doesn't replace you. You've felt this in small, forgettable doses your whole life. You give a toast at a wedding, and for 3 minutes you're magnetic, timing every line, holding a room that would normally never listen to you this closely. Then the night ends, you drive home, and you're just you again, checking if you left the stove on. That return trip back to ordinary size is the whole mechanism working correctly. Most people make that trip 1,000 times without ever noticing they made it. That's what the man from the opening lost somewhere in those 6 months. The borrowing stopped being temporary. His ego, flooded by something vastly bigger than itself, forgot it was only ever a vessel, and started believing it was the source. That's the exact moment a mind stops thinking, I did something powerful, and starts feeling I am power itself. From the outside, the early symptoms look almost identical to confidence, which is exactly what makes this so hard to catch before it's too late. Grandiosity wearing the face of vision, certainty wearing the face of clarity, contempt for doubt wearing the face of decisiveness. Have you ever mistaken one good year for proof that you're built differently than everyone around you? That thought, however quiet, is the door. Jung had a name for the stage past borrowing, the stage where the door actually opens. Archetypal possession. Not possession in the movie sense, in the clinical sense. The ego stops directing the personality and starts serving something older and hungrier than the person's own history. At this stage, contradiction doesn't just annoy him, it feels like a threat to his survival, because somewhere along the way, the plan and the self quietly became the same thing. Push back on the plan and you're not disagreeing anymore. You're attacking him. This is why the fall almost never comes with warning signs the person can see from the inside. The eyes doing the noticing are the same eyes that are already lying to him, and it wears a different mask depending on who's carrying it. The entrepreneur possessed by it starts talking about markets the way prophets used to talk about nations. The politician starts treating disagreement as betrayal instead of ordinary dissent. The spiritual teacher starts accepting a kind of devotion no honest teacher should ever accept, and starts quietly believing he's earned it. The critic turned tastemaker stops reviewing the work in front of him and starts reviewing whether the work has properly honored him. Different costumes, same thing wearing them. You don't need a stadium or a boardroom to feel a smaller version of this. The manager who gets one glowing review starts speaking in the meeting like his opinion settles things now. The founder who closes one funding round starts talking about the industry like he's already won it. The kid whose post did numbers for a week starts checking the counter every 4 minutes, certain the next one has to do numbers too, because some part of him has already decided that's just who he is now. Same mechanism, smaller stage. You've probably met this in a boss, a friend who got successful fast, or on a slow enough day, if you're honest, in yourself, and looked away before you had to name it. It starts with a room clapping for you. That's the whole crime scene, and you were standing right there for it. Applause isn't evidence. It's a chemical spike, gone almost as fast as it hit. But an ego that's already losing its sense of scale treats one full room as objective proof of a God-sized self. The praise gets more specific, more frequent, and it calcifies into identity faster than you'd think. Not, I gave a good talk that day. Eventually, I am the kind of person rooms exist to admire. Then money gets involved, and money doesn't just buy comfort. It buys the disappearance of friction. Every denied request, every tight budget, every landlord who won't budge, quietly vanishes from daily life. Friction was doing something important the whole time. It kept the ego tethered to its actual size. Remove enough of it for long enough and a person stops running into the proof that he's still a body, same as everyone else's. Then power over other people, and something strange happens to a room once you're in charge of everyone in it. It stops correcting you. It starts reflecting you back at yourself. The people under you learn fast and correctly that disagreeing with the person who signs their check has a price. So the honest objection gets quieter first. Then it stops showing up at all. What replaces it is agreement, curated, constant, and increasingly unrelated to anything happening outside the building. He starts mistaking silence for consensus, because silence is cheaper for everyone in the room than telling him the truth. Dissenting advisors get moved sideways. Loyal ones get promoted into the rooms where the real decisions happen. Give it enough time and the org chart itself turns into a filter, screening out disagreement before it ever climbs high enough to reach him. It doesn't take a conspiracy. It takes ordinary self-interest repeated by enough people for long enough until the only thing left in the room is his own reflection, dressed up as other people's opinions. Every honest voice pushed out of a life doesn't just remove a person, it removes the last chance to catch the mistake before reality catches it instead. And reality collects with interest. The more power a person gets, the fewer people are left who are willing or even able to tell him something he doesn't want to hear. And he, the one person who most needs to hear it, becomes, by design, the last person who ever will. None of this stays still. It's a loop, and loops like this speed up. An identity built on outside proof needs a growing supply of new proof just to keep standing, because underneath the mask sits an ordinary mortal ego that already suspects somewhere it won't look directly, that it doesn't belong up there. So the wins have to get bigger. The applause has to get louder. The stakes have to climb, not because real ambition is growing, but because the fear underneath the mask is growing, and only a bigger hit can drown it out for another few weeks. The founder who already built one company now needs the next one to be historic. The politician who already won an election needs a landslide next time, not a win. The performer who already sold out an arena needs a stadium next, then something bigger than a stadium after that. None of it is really about ambition anymore. It's a maintenance payment on a debt he doesn't know he's carrying. You can watch the receipts pile up in small ways long before anything collapses. He starts checking engagement numbers at 2 a.m. He starts steering ordinary conversations back toward the last win, then the one before that, like a man circling a warm fire he's afraid of leaving. He starts needing the room to confirm something a healthy person wouldn't need confirmed twice. None of that looks like crisis from the outside. It looks like drive. Is your next goal actually about the goal? Or is it one more receipt you're collecting to convince yourself the mask is real? By the time the isolation is complete, no honest counsel left, no friction left, no ordinary consequence left anywhere in daily life. He isn't operating inside reality anymore. He's operating inside a private hallucination that reality only agreed to go along with for a while. And reality doesn't extend that deal forever. It was always a loan. It's already accruing interest, whether he checks the balance or not. Jung didn't think the mind was a passive container. He thought it was a system that corrects itself, whether the conscious mind agrees to it or not. He called the mechanism enantiodromia. A force pushed to its extreme produces its own opposite. Applied here, the rule is almost mechanical. The higher and faster the ego rises without ever learning its own limits, the harder it falls. And it always falls, not because the universe runs on fairness, because the unconscious runs on compensation. Whatever the ego refuses to admit, doubt, need, guilt, plain human limitation, doesn't disappear. It gets exiled underneath, and it doesn't sit still down there. It organizes, it waits, and it erupts, usually at the worst possible moment, usually in public, usually aimed at the exact spot the person was most sure was untouchable. The leader who built his whole identity on discipline gets undone by one impulsive decision nobody saw coming. The leader who built his identity on honesty gets undone by the one lie he thought was too small to matter. The unconscious doesn't pick targets at random. It picks the spot where the mask was thinnest, because that's exactly where the pressure had been building the longest. This is the man from the opening. The leaked memo wasn't bad luck. It was written by someone he'd stopped bothering to manage, because he'd long since decided he was above being caught. The sworn statement wasn't an ambush. It was the one lie he told so many times he forgot it was still a lie. He didn't get unlucky at the peak of his power. He got exposed at it in the one place he'd quietly decided the rules no longer applied to him. That's why so many collapses look almost engineered from the inside. One reckless call, wildly out of character, right at the height of his power. A decision that looks less like bad luck in hindsight and more like something underneath him arranging its own exposure. Jung would say that's close to right. The unconscious doesn't ask permission. When conscious correction doesn't happen on its own, the psyche forces it through symptom. A compulsive act, a sudden confession, a self-sabotaging choice that makes no strategic sense until you realize strategy was never what produced it. Sometimes it's an affair conducted with almost no attempt to hide it, like some part of him wanted to get caught. Sometimes it's a bet so obviously reckless that everyone around him assumes there has to be information they're not seeing. There isn't. Sometimes it's one sentence said in public that undoes years of careful reputation in about 4 seconds, spoken by someone who, months earlier, would never have said anything so careless. The fall almost never happens during the struggle. It happens right after the win, the promotion, the acquisition, the crowning public moment. That timing isn't an accident. Inflation peaks exactly at the height of success, so the correction, arriving right on schedule, peaks there too. If the mind is always balancing its own books, every high you didn't earn has already been logged somewhere you can't see. You just haven't gotten the bill yet. It doesn't always show up as scandal. Sometimes it's quieter and just as brutal. A depressive collapse with no visible trigger, a wave of paranoia convincing him that everyone around him is plotting against him, an illness with no physical cause that shows up almost exactly 1 month after the biggest win of his life. Insomnia, no sedative touches. A habit that starts as a reward and ends as the only thing holding him together. Different clothes, same correction. Here's the darker part. By the time he starts suspecting betrayal everywhere, he's usually already spent years pushing out every honest voice that could have stopped this earlier. The isolation he's afraid of now, he built himself, one dismissed objection at a time. The "everyone's against me" story isn't a discovery, it's a projection. The doubt he exiled is finally too loud to keep ignoring, so he blames the outside world for something that came from inside him. A person can spend years spending confidence out of an account he never actually put anything into, borrowing who he is from applause, from other people's belief, from a title on a door, until the day the balance gets called in all at once, and there's nothing behind the signature. And here's what makes it crueler than one bad year. Without doing the work, the pattern doesn't end with a single collapse. It repeats. A person survives the fall, rebuilds quietly, tastes success again, inflates again, falls again, each time a little faster, because the real confusion between doing and being was never actually fixed, only interrupted. Public apologies fail for exactly this reason, most of the time. They treat the correction like a PR problem to manage, when the unconscious was never negotiating about image in the first place. The Greeks had a word for this too, long before Jung gave it a clinical name: nemesis. The idea that pride always summons its own reckoning, as reliably as gravity pulls things down. Jung didn't moralize any of it. He just mapped the machine underneath, and the machine doesn't care how good your intentions were on the way up. It doesn't care how many people believed in you either. It only cares about the gap between what you claimed and what you actually were, and it closes that gap eventually, one way or another. If inflation follows a law, then deflation isn't punishment. It's correction, and however much it hurts on the way down, it's the only road back to something solid enough to actually stand on. Jung's answer was never, "Don't succeed." Success was never the actual problem. The confusion underneath it is. The whole task comes down to separating two sentences that sound almost the same and aren't. I did something powerful, and I am powerful. The first is a fact about an action, closed, finished, true. The second is a delusion about identity, and it's the delusion that eventually comes due. Integration starts with the part almost everyone tries to skip, the shadow. Not the cartoon villain shadow from cheap stories, the ordinary one. Doubt, mediocrity, plain need, guilt that never actually got dealt with. The unremarkable fact of being one limited person out of billions of other limited people. Letting those parts back into the room instead of paying an endless, rising price to keep them locked outside it. It also means stripping off the curated public self, engineered for applause, calibrated for admiration, to find whatever's actually underneath it. A lot of people, by the time they finally check, aren't sure what's left. This part rarely looks dramatic from the outside. It looks like sitting across from someone whose job is to tell you the truth and actually letting the sentence land instead of already drafting the rebuttal while they're still talking. It looks like remembering on purpose 3 specific times you were wrong and made someone else pay for it. Nobody claps for this stage. That's exactly why it works. That's the real cost of staying inflated too long. Not the scandal, not the headline. The quiet fact that somewhere in the climb, he stopped being able to tell which parts of him were real and which parts were performance, calibrated for a crowd that was never watching as closely as it felt like they were. Done honestly, deflation puts the ego back inside its real size. Smaller, yes, but load-bearing again. Able to carry weight without cracking at the next peak. In practice, this looks unglamorous. Finding one person who's paid to disagree with you instead of 10 who are paid to agree. An apology with no qualifying clause attached to it. Doing one ordinary task with your own hands on a regular basis so your body remembers what it feels like to just be competent instead of exceptional. That's what real stability looks like, and it rarely resembles what people picture when they picture power. It isn't the ability to rise without a ceiling, it's knowing exactly how much space you're entitled to take up, and refusing to take more than that even when the room is handing it to you for free. There's an old trick for staying ahead of the delusion, older than Jung, older than the word psychology. Roman generals riding home in triumph through the streets rode with a slave standing behind them in the chariot, saying one line into their ear the entire parade, that they were mortal, not to humiliate them, to keep them attached to their own limits at the exact moment those limits felt least real. Most people today have nobody riding behind them saying it. Here's the only test that actually matters, and you'll get to run it the next time something goes right for you. A thought will show up. It'll tell you this win proves something permanent about your nature. That you're not like the others. That the rules everyone else lives inside were never really built with someone like you in mind. That thought is not confidence. That's the archetype. Talking through a crack in your ego, asking quietly for a permanent seat at the table. It will sound reasonable. It always does. It will use your own voice, your own logic, your own evidence, because that's the only material it has to work with. You don't have someone riding behind you in a chariot to say it for you. So you'll have to be the one who says it every time the applause gets loud enough to start sounding like proof of something it was never actually proving at all. Most people don't say it in time. That's not a guess. That's the base rate. And you won't know which side of it you landed on until the applause stops, which means statistically, you probably don't know yet.
True greatness isn't rising without a ceiling, but knowing your limits and refusing to take more than your share.
Subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment if you finally recognize your true value.